Today on the Jigsaw podcast, my guest is Jordan Rhodes. Jordan is a financial advisor at Comprehensive Financial Services. She's a mother of three, an adopted mother, also a baker, cookie/cake decorator. Jordan, thanks for coming out. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Just want to talk first about the financial side of things. Obviously, you're a financial advisor. How did you get into finance?
When I graduated high school, I went to start at Ball State. Didn't have any idea really at that point what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to be in the business field in some sort. So I just started taking some random classes in the business college at Ball State, and when I first took my first intro to accounting class, I kind of knew that's what I wanted to be studying. I knew at that point that I didn't want to be in accounting, but I knew that an accounting degree would open pretty much any business door that I wanted to get into. So graduated from Ball State with an accounting degree. Started about a year after that at American Funds, which is a mutual fund investment company down in Carmel. Really enjoyed what I did there. I worked kind of on the back end with accounts and just really liked the business itself, which kind of led me to when we started growing our family and realized we were spending more time in Muncie with family than in Indy, where we had ended up. We wanted to move back to Muncie, and my father approached me, who's been a financial advisor for 40 years. He owns Comprehensive Financial, and at the time, his business partner was kind of slowing down on new production. Dad's not terribly far away from retirement. He's not, thinking about that anytime soon, but his concern was for his clients, what's going to happen to his clients when he reaches that point, because it was just him and his business partner at the time. And so he approached me when we talked about coming back to Muncie and said, hey, I really want you to consider this because I think you'd be a good fit, and did a lot of thinking and looking over what it entailed, and it did work out really well for what I was looking for. And so I joined him in 2014, and before I could even join him, had to get all the licenses and qualifications that I needed to be a financial advisor, stuff that I didn't need with what I was doing in American Funds.
Is that a long process to go through and get the licenses and certifications you need?
The testing is difficult. There were 3 different areas that I had to have tests for to qualify for. One of them, for example, is an 8-hour-long proctored test at an exam center, going all over the ins and outs of all the situations you could, come across as a financial advisor. And some of them, honestly, we don't see and probably won't ever see, but it's stuff that you have to know going into the business to be able to have the right licenses. But those are the licenses that allow me to do things like handle individual stocks and bonds, or, sell the mutual funds, or sell the variable annuities, or all this stuff.
What all do you guys offer at Comprehensive Financial Services here in Muncie?
If we broke it down to just a basic answer, we and to put this pretty basically, we handle people's financial stuff. If you want to break it down to a product standpoint, we handle direct mutual funds for that person that just needs to open the IRA, or we handle investment advisory for somebody who retired. They need to know what to do with their 401k. They're no longer employed by the company. They don't really have the service that they used to have. They now want to manage that themselves and get some advice and help on that. We do that. We handle annuities for somebody who's looking for an income stream or who needs guarantees on their returns that they can't get anywhere else. We also do actual comprehensive financial planning, as the name insinuates, and that is a very detailed, long process where we dig in really, really deep on a client's ins and outs of their financial picture, set up a plan for them. Whatever that plan entails, they can take to implement anywhere. It's not a plan that we have to implement. So it's really nice that a client can come in, get objective advice on how to get to the goals that they're setting. So the comprehensive financial plans themselves, those tend to be more for like business owners with really in-depth situations, or people with, say, lots of properties, or an estate that they're going to have trouble with dealing with how they want that divvied up. We offer a free planning service for pretty much anybody that comes in, and it's not quite as detailed, but it gives a good picture of anybody that comes in. We can project out based on what they're doing now or what they want to do, what, say, 10 years down the road looks like for them financially.
Is that a good place to start? Because I know for a lot of people, myself included, finances is so confusing. There's so many different...
We rely on that.
Yeah. Just, I mean, like I say, if you had advice for someone that wanted to do something, just go talk to someone.
Yeah.
Is the best route. And
yeah.
I'm assuming most offer a free service similar to what you guys do of just some advice where to start.
Yeah, you'll probably get that just about anywhere you walk in the door. We're a little bit different. We're not your, Edward Jones or Raymond James or whatever that is. That's kind of the big chain. We're your kind of hometown group, if you will. So we have a lot more flexibility on what we can do for people without charging. There's a lot of times when, we'll spend multiple appointments, many hours with somebody before we do any business with them, if you will. And sometimes we don't do any, and that's fine. That's something we'll do all day, every day, because people appreciate that, and maybe there's nothing we can do for them, but there's a lot of times where those prospective clients that didn't end up being clients ended up sending somebody else in because they appreciated the time we spent with them.
I want to put you on the spot here with
All
finances.
right.
We're similar ages.
Yep.
Early 30s. The one thing that everyone talks about and worries about, and especially our age group, is Social Security.
Sure.
Everyone is planning that we're not going to have it. Our generation's not going to have access to it. What's your take on that?
For our clients that are coming in that are closer to retirement, we're planning on it. We're putting it in their picture. At this point, we don't know any more than you do about whether it's going to be around or not. So it's a question that we ask when we're doing planning. Do you want to factor this in? And we let the client determine, because we don't have any input any more than anybody coming in off the street do. But we don't want to just go ahead and assume that the client wants to factor that in, because just like you said, we don't know how much of it's going to be there, if it's going to be there when 30 years down the road we are looking at retirement. So we leave that up to the client, and if they want advice on whether they should put it in there or not, we'll work with them on that. I put it in on my planning. I like to assume that there will be something after we've paid in for this many years.
Do you put it in at a kind of a decline rate of what it would be now?
No, I stick with it. Politics is what it is today, but I think that it would take a lot for them to take away something that people have paid into for so many years, expecting there to be something there for them when they retire. I think it would take a big act to do that, and I think there would be a lot of pushback if they did that. And for me personally, I factor it in as it is now, the numbers they're giving me.
Gotcha. What kind of challenges do you face in finance? I know it's an ever-changing scene.
Probably our biggest as advisors on the back end is, what's the word I'm looking for here? Compliance. So because of the Bernie Madoffs and, these guys that have the shrinkers of the world who have taken major advantage of their clients, we now have massive hoops to jump through just to take care of our clients the right way. So, my dad will tell you he's been doing this for so long that a life application, for example, used to be a single page back and front, and now you're talking about 35 pages that you have to submit just to get somebody into the process of going through underwriting, because there's so many, they're covering their backs, they're covering our backs, they're covering the client's backs, and some of it's good, but some of it's just a little bit overbearing. On the other end, on the client side, I think it's hard getting across to people that, not that long ago, the retirement picture for people, even some that are retiring today, was your pension's going to fund the majority of your retirement. We're going to supplement with Social Security, and maybe if you need a little more, a little bit of retirement savings. And it's completely flip-flop now. You're talking to people who, there's hardly any pensions available. You know, there are a few out there. So now we're talking about people have to come up with the majority of their retirement living income on their own, funding it themselves through a 401k, maybe getting a match, maybe not, supplementing that with Social Security. And where a pension was completely funded by the company, now you're talking about primarily funded by the employee. Match that with the fact that, you know, the inflation of expenses of everything are quickly outpacing inflation of incomes. So I think the biggest thing is for people our age, getting them to start early. Mm-hmm. You know, I've been pretty excited to see some of the people that I'm working with, because I'm seeing a lot of young people that are getting it and are, not buying the new vehicle or, not getting the new phone every time it comes out or all this stuff, because that's not in their plan, and that doesn't mean they don't ever get that. That just means that they're waiting for the right time and they're doing what they need to be doing on the financial side of it to make sure that down the road they're not having to bring in a full-time income until they're 75 just to make ends meet.
Retirement for our generation is completely possible. It's just a little bit different avenues we're going to have to take to be comfortable at retirement age.
Yeah, I think it's going to take a lot more proactivity on us versus the employer with the situations we're seeing now with retirement vehicles available to us.
You mentioned Bernie Madoff, and obviously the financial industry took a huge hit, not just economically, but just the confidence, the image. Did you see that here locally or with some of your either clients or potential clients?
We get that question sometimes. I will say my industry and our business here locally, Comprehensive Financial Services, our clients are almost every single one of them is a referral brought in by somebody we already know on a personal level. So we don't get a lot of people who come in the door and don't have some level of trust with us already. So that does help. I mean, you're like I mentioned earlier, your Edward Jones or your Raymond James that are advertising in the mailers and all that, they're going to get a number of people who are calling them up, cold call, asking about funds, stopping into their office just to talk, just to get a feel for the person that they're talking to. And we don't get a lot of that. So there's not as big of a factor with gaining people's trust. But we get those questions all the time. We had a lady come in shortly after I started, and she was looking at moving around some money, which made sense in her situation. And she sat across the table from my dad, and she asked, "Can I ask you a question?" And he said, "Sure, go ahead." And she said, "Do you have a plane?" And he said, I'm sorry? Excuse me? And she said, "Do you have an airplane?" And he said, "No, I've got a 10-year-old Chevy sitting out in the parking lot." He said, "But that's the extent of my vehicles." Well, her concern was this Marcus Schrenker down there in Indianapolis that had just done a similar move to Bernie Madoff, taking people's money, started paying people out of other funds instead of actually investing it. He's the one that took his plane up, faked his own death, jumped out of his plane, wrecked his plane, went and got his motorcycle out of the hangar. She was thinking that all financial advisors were these guys, living on Geist Reservoir, with their plane just ready in the hangar, ready to go when they needed to make their quick escape. So, and it was a legitimate question. She was not being silly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was such a big headline, and you saw the effect of it on people. I mean, it was their income, their life savings, and I was curious because everyone's going to associate Bernie Madoff with any financial advisor.
Right.
I mean, and it's apples and oranges compared to here in East Central Indiana compared to New York. But I was just curious because
Yeah.
you
And we don't take this lightly because this is people's lives that we're handling. You know, their retirement money, their savings. This is what enables them to live the lives that they want to live. So, you know, we do jump through all those hoops to make sure that all that stuff gets done properly, and it may take some extra time, and it may be a little more annoying for us on the back end, but it's for their best interest, and it may be more annoying for them having to sign all the paperwork and redo all the papers and do all this, but it's for them.
yeah, it's a hassle up front, but going forward, you know, it's just protecting them. So
Yep.
as I mentioned in the intro, not only are you a financial advisor, but you're the mother of 3.
I am.
And your middle daughter is adopted.
She is.
Was that a decision you and your husband had made that, hey, we're going to adopt, or was it something circumstances got you to adopt?
We had always decided, even before we had our oldest is 8 now. Before we had any kids, we had decided we were going to try to have a biological child of our own, but knowing so many of our friends and family that had dealt with situations where they were not able to do that, we didn't take that for granted. So the plan was always we were going to try, and then after that we would adopt. Whether we were successful or not, we would move from there on to adoption because we're aware that there are a number of children that don't have what they need as far as being raised in parental figures. So we had friends from church growing up that had adopted through an agency out of Indianapolis that deals with a lot of high-risk pregnancies. Teenage mothers, drugs, don't know who the father is, so we're not going to keep the baby, that sort of situation. So we, when our oldest was 18 months old, we signed up with that same agency. And that was kind of what led us there. We were in a position that we were able to swing that. It is not cheap, and looking back, I don't know how we were in a position to do that, but we made it work. And it was 13 months from when we signed up that we were placed. We were placed a couple of times before we were placed with our daughter Morgan, but it being that they deal with a lot of high-risk situations, there were a lot of times where they would either match us and we'd be placed and then we'd never get contacted, or the birth mother would step away from the program, which was fine. We were always with the mindset that if the mother wanted to parent, that was in the best interest of that child.
Now, when you say placed, does that mean you met the child, or you were just on the kind of the waiting list to get that child?
Yeah, this agency deals almost primarily with newborns. So you're typically matched, is what they say, when the mother is still pregnant. Occasionally they'll deal with some older children as far as like into toddler ages, or maybe a sibling group, very rarely. But almost all of them are pre-birth matching.
So after 13 months, what happened? Obviously,
so we were called on I believe it was a Friday, and they said we've got a pair for you, we've got a match for you. They're not due for 3 months. We're gonna have the birth mom reach out to you. The joke at this point had been, if you know my husband, he has a handlebar mustache, and so leading up to this call, the adoption agency had called us and said, okay, we're getting all these people that like your profile, but then when they see the picture of your husband's mustache, they kind of hesitate. So she's like, my suggestion is you cut off the facial hair, you take some new pictures, because I think you'll be placed very quickly in that position. Which is really weird because it's a handlebar mustache. It is what it is. But this was kind of before the trend of, the big beards.
Before the hipster
and that.
trend came in.
Yeah. So we had, funnily enough, we were doing all these different things to raise money for adoption. We had started a fundraiser to see who was going to get to cut Cliff's mustache off. And then on that Friday, we get this call that we've been placed. So we put the fundraiser on hold. So we got a call, like I said, that we had been placed. We were going to be contacted. less than a week later, we got a call again from the agency. I figured it was based on the same parents. But they said, actually, things have changed. We have another birth mother that we've switched you over to that has chosen you. She is due in less than a month. And she was paired, but the family that was going to be adopting, they had a personal situation come up and had to step away. So we're in kind of a last-minute urgent situation. So we got that call on a Friday. They called us back on Monday, said she was going in for just a checkup. But when she went in, they were keeping her to induce her. And Morgan was born that Tuesday. So from Friday to Tuesday, now we have what's considered a fall-in-your-lap adoption, where the baby's there waiting for you. And we got her 24 hours after birth. So
was she born in the area, or did you guys have to travel?
She was born in Anderson. So it wasn't very far at all. We were in a rare situation where both birth parents were involved. So we have full medical histories from both birth parents. It was a situation where they were not able to keep her. The state would not allow them to keep her. So they were basically presented with the options. You can place her in foster care with the thought that you can work to get her back. You won't know where she goes. You won't be able to have any contact. Or you can place her with an adoptive family. You'll be able to have contact, keep in touch with them, keep up with her. And with they've had some history in this area, and so they chose adoption. And we started with a semi-open adoption where they knew our first names, they didn't know our last names. They of course didn't know where we lived, but we sent regular pictures, updates, all that stuff. And now we're close enough that we're Facebook friends. They know how to get a hold of us. They've actually moved to Florida, so we reach out, we keep in touch, and I don't have any worry about anything happening between us. So.
How old is she now?
The mother or Morgan?
Your daughter.
5.
Yeah. She's 5 now. Okay.
Yep.
Would you have any advice for someone who's looking to go through the adoption process?
My biggest advice would be don't get attached to a placement or to a matching. We learned pretty quick that, that first call you get that you're matched, you're so excited, you start calling everyone, we're matched, we're going to be parents, so excited. Like I said, we were matched 3 times before Morgan, and it got to the point where, it's pretty hard to make those calls back when you say, they never reached out, so I don't think it's going to happen, or they've chosen somebody else after they chose us, or whatever it might be. So, it is tough, those situations, and it's tough waiting, but it does tend to work out in the long run. Anybody I've known that's gone through the process has run into something similar, and they've always ended up with, a great child that they're now raising and loving. And
so a lot of patience.
Yep.
A lot of patience.
Yep.
Now you mentioned you guys went through an agency. Is there another route?
There's a lot of options for how you can do that. You can do a private adoption. You have to do all the work yourself, and you have to find the couple, and you have to be confident that, if you're investing in that couple, because there's legalities to how much money you can essentially exchange to help take care of the birth mother while she's pregnant. You obviously want to make sure she's taking care of herself and her body and the baby and all that. So, but there's legalities on how much that can be, and how to make sure that they're not just doing this to get that money and then walk away. How many times have they maybe done that? Because that does happen. So we went through the agency knowing that they don't deal with birth mothers who have done that in their system before. They have certain placement rates, and, they've just got the history to know what they're dealing with in that situation. There's other ways too. Ours was a private adoption company you can go through. There's some faith-based ministries that do adoption placements that I think have had good luck. There are different options for that.
It's very interesting. It's got to be, I couldn't imagine having to wait 13 months. I mean, just to keep waiting by the phone, and then when you do get contacted to see if, it's going to work out or not.
Yep. Yep.
So on top of all that, you're also a baker.
I try.
You try. I've seen some of the cakes you made. Every time I'm on Facebook, it seems like it pops up, and Jordan's baking hundreds of cookies and decorating them and cakes and all that. What got you into baking and cake decorating?
That started about, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years ago. It was literally me seeing a picture of a decorated cookie on the internet, and I was like, I'm gonna try that. And it was pretty elaborate for not having any previous experience in that area, and I did it, and I got it done pretty good. So just over the last 5 years, my stock of tools and supplies and tricks and tips have just started stacking up, and that's kind of my creative release at the end of the day.
I think that's so important to have something outside of work.
Yep.
You want to be more than just your title at work, whether it's, like you said, baking a cake or doing your cake decorations, or if it's podcasting or photography, whatever it might be. I think it's so important for people to have something they can get a creative release or whatever it may be. You also offer classes on decorating cookies.
Well, next week is my first one.
Oh, so it just started.
Yeah,
gotcha.
I haven't done one. And the reason I'm doing that is because I had so many people ask about it, and it's more of a fun evening than I would say, educational evening, where people can come and relax, just learn a few tricks so that they can go home and start playing around with it themselves. Because that's how I learned. I just started messing around with stuff. So this can give people a little bit of a leg up and to know exactly what they need without having to buy 4 different things to find out what they actually needed to start. I'm kind of limited in what I can do. As far as the baking itself, I'm not a licensed bakery. I don't have a licensed kitchen, so I can't go out and sell cookies and cakes to people without fear of, the health department coming in and writing a citation or whatever it is they do. So I don't really step my foot into that too much. I bake for some friends and family, and I basically make costs. So
could you see yourself growing that?
It would take a lot. My fear would be I would burn out on it really quick if it became like a job. I like it more. I got really busy over Christmas helping out with friends and family and all that stuff, and I like now that it's a quieter time of year, I'm thinking about what can I go and do, not for somebody, but just experiment and to do something fun and to see what I can do for me versus filling a request for somebody else, and that's fun for me. So I don't know. Maybe I think that rules and regulations would have to lessen for me to even consider it. There's a lot of states that allow what's called a cottage food law, where you can bake out of your own kitchen as long as you state that you're baking out of your own kitchen and not have that. It's cost prohibitive right now. You would have to sell things for exceptional amounts of money to be able to actually make a profit in that business, and right now that's just not my focus.
Yeah. So with all this, I mean, obviously your main job as a financial advisor, a mother of 3, the side business hobby of the baking and decorating, how do you time manage? Because that's one thing I'm personally trying to improve on that I think so many people are good at and so many people fail at. You got a lot going on. How do you manage to get everything done in a day?
I don't sleep a lot. I get a lot done after my kids are in bed, because typically when I come home, it's basically mass chaos until the kids are in bed. I am not in any way salary where I'm at. In the financial advisor world, it is 100% sales. It is what it is. I don't get any money for sitting in my chair. So if something's going on in my life where I need to, come in at 11 one day because I had too much going on at home the night before, if I don't have appointments, I'm not there doing the appointments, making money for the financial advisor job, but I can balance my life a little better for that. I don't have to ask for time off. I don't have to, put in a request, make sure somebody's there to cover my shift. A lot of people don't have that. That is definitely a privilege that I have with this job.
You have the flexibility of not having to be a 9 to 5 every day.
But at the same time, I'm also driving to Indy on weeknights or weekends to meet with clients when that's the only time they can work. So it has its ups and its downs. I don't mind doing that. So I don't really want to call that a down. A lot of people would consider that a downside because they don't want to be on the road home at 9 o'clock at night from Indianapolis when maybe they've already been in the office all day. But if that's the case, I might take 3 hours off in the afternoon later in the week to be able to, like today, drive my daughter around to sell Girl Scout cookies because that's where life's at right now. So, I'd say that the flexibility with my primary job is a big factor in that. My husband has a job where he's off at 2:30 every day. He works early in the morning until 2:30. So having him home all of the evening is helpful.
Divide and conquer, right?
Yeah, we do a lot of dividing and conquering.
With such a busy schedule, are you able to get time to yourself? Because I know it's another thing I've been working on. I know a lot of people I've talked to is try to get a little time to themselves each day. If it's whether it be reading, going for a run, whatever it may be. Are you able to work that in as well?
I would say that falls under my baking category.
That's your kind of getaway time.
Yeah, because that's typically, like I said, after the kids have gone to bed. I can actually do that. I can pop my tablet up, have Netflix up, have a whole stand full of cookies in front of me that I'm decorating, and I've gotten to the point where I've done it enough times that I can focus on both the movie and the cookies, still come out with the desired result, and still get that kind of media downtime that I'm looking for. But I've never been one to. We don't have cable. We don't even own a TV, so. I've never been one to just kind of jump on the couch and sit and watch. I always feel like I have to be doing something else at the same time too. So that I would say the baking really covers that self-time. I like to sit in front of the computer some, maybe play a game or something like that every once in a while, but that's, rare.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time coming out and talking on some different topics today. Is there an email if anyone's interested in maybe set up a meeting, financial advice, or anything like that they can reach you at?
My email is jordan.rhodes, that's jordan.rhodes at refer, R-E-F as in Frank, E-R, C-F-S as in Charlie Frank Sam.com.
Great. I'll put that up on the Facebook page as well. As always, you can reach me at thejakesewellpodcast@gmail.com or follow me on Twitter at thejspodcast. I appreciate it. Thanks again for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you.